in this demanding, challenging economy and the cost of living and the stress and the distractions that we have, what advice would you give to a recruitment consultant who needs to get a bit of life harmony and you can get burnt out in this because it's quite demanding? How do you be present? Because I think zooming out sometimes can be the best thing you can do as opposed to making that next phone call, right?
Yeah. My best advice would be get a pig.
Jeremy Snell, welcome to the Purpose-Led Leadership Podcast. Delighted to have you on. We've bumped into each other a few times at different networking events. I love what you're doing for the sector. I think I came on your show about 3 or 4 years ago, actually. I think you came on mine, but never done one in person, right?
Yep. No, we've done LinkedIn Lives. We've done everything apart from meeting the flesh for a pod.
Absolutely. So delighted to have you on. Before we go into your kind of backstory and what you do, what do you actually do? How would you summarize what you do?
What do I do? If I give you the real version of what I do, I work with recruitment businesses, helping individuals identify ways to achieve higher levels of performance. I help teams to be able to work better. Ultimately, I help people to have more fun whilst doing the job of being a recruiter. Because I believe that fun comes from being good at what you do. When you're good at what you do, you enjoy what you do, you get good chemistry set in your body because it's rewarding, it's fulfilling. So it sounds maybe a bit shallow, but I like to help people to find the game that's hidden inside the seriousness of recruitment and have fun.
See, I love that. There's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of recruitment trainers out there. And I think it certainly helps that you've been in the sector quite a while and you've done the things you're asking your people to do. Give us a bit of background into your life before what you're doing now. Life before.
Sure. How far would you like me to go back?
Well, I normally ask guests since school, so let's go with that. Yeah, let's find out a bit more about you.
Yeah, okay. So I left. I went to school in North London. I went to a school called QE Boys, which was a very academically driven school. I followed a path at school that was one of the intention was I would become a research scientist. All my family are research scientists, PhDs. My brother's in Switzerland researching the cure for cancer, and I was following the same tread. So I did A levels in physics, chemistry, biology, maths. Went to university to study microbiology at Surrey, and there was a moment I think in a particular laboratory at university where I realized this probably isn't me. Whatever it was in the Petri dish or whatever it was that we were doing at that moment, I just had this realization. I've been following this path for such a long time because I felt, like reflecting on it, I felt this is what I should be doing because this is what everyone else has done. And it just didn't sit right. So I left university without completing, much to many people's dismay.
Yeah, right.
But I was certain that I was doing the right thing. But I was totally fixated on what I didn't want to do. And what frustrated people was I couldn't say, it's because I want to do this instead. I didn't have an instead. I just knew this so isn't me.
There's an intuition or something,
right? If I carry on doing this, I can't see that it's ever going to lead to a point where I feel rewarded or satisfied or So I made a quick, my family say, a quick decision to stop doing it. And I heard an advert on the radio. It was on Capital Radio.
Oh yeah.
And it was an advert for somebody to join the wine merchant to the Queen Mother, to join the buying team and to learn how to taste wine. and they'd put it on the radio because it had been advertised. Capital Radio used to have a foyer with job cards in it. And one of the DJs had taken this job card and said, listen to this job. So I applied for the job and I got the job, and I became a wine taster.
I think of worse jobs, right?
Yeah, and just around the corner from here, I used to go to college on Tooley Street.
Oh, right, yeah.
At the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. So I did exams. So I was at college 1 day a week. I was working in this business for 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Slowly ruining my palate because of the quality of the wines that I was drinking. That meant I would probably never be able to drink wine again.
Yeah.
I suddenly felt, this is quite a socially driven enterprise. This is an interesting, you can picture what the job was like. So it felt very different from what I originally set out to do.
Yeah.
And then the business got bought. It got bought by an entrepreneur. So I started working for this entrepreneur who stripped out a lot of the old bureaucracy of what the business had been. And he started sending me around the UK to bonded warehouses to taste wine stocks. And I would taste a wine stock. I'd give him a valuation. Based upon the valuation, we'd set a selling price. So we would turn wine around from bonded warehouses. And it was a chain of wine merchants called Bin Ends. And we ended up on the front page of the Evening Standard because of the prices that we were able to sell things for that other stores weren't able to do.
Right.
And I started to trade, became more of a trader of wines. And the whole thing was so different from what I thought I was going to do.
It seems like a highly intelligent family who, researching cancer and all this kind of stuff to more of kind of the sort of sales.
Yeah, completely. Things, right? Yeah, and kind of, it was kind of a bit more wheeler dealer type work. Go taste this stuff, give us a price on it, haggle what we're going to buy it for. Let's make sure we've sold it before we pay for it. Let's get this stuff turned around quickly. And I just liked the chaos and the dynamism of it. The business overtraded. The business closed. And I moved out to work in Ibiza.
Right.
And I became a bucking bronco bull rider,
right?
thing guy in Ibiza.
I picture that in my head now.
Like and that was to clear my head. And when I came back, I ended up in recruitment. I'm sorry, it's such a long answer to such a simple question.
It's interesting. It's interesting to find out the background. Yeah.
So coming back to the UK, back from Ibiza, 7 days a week I was working. The actual concept of what hard work was, I feel, was there. And there was a one-line advert in a newspaper saying, "Do you like working with people?"
So your family was quite kind of like academic, kind of like quite, shall we say, traditional. Get the job, get the university, get the wife, get the car, get the house, kind of thing. And you were not the black sheep, for want of a better term.
Totally was.
How did that play out then?
It took them quite a long time to come to terms with it, and a lot would often be referenced about the potential that I had academically. You could have been someone like a Rocky, right? A laboratory Rocky, or you could have been someone like you were so good at what you were doing, but it just wasn't there in the enjoyment, the vision of, is this it, was kind of.
So it sounded like from very young age you kind of in tune. You had that intuition about kind of like, or certainly you wasn't going to be told what to do, kind of.
Yes,
and I think that's probably helped your recruitment career. Would you not say?
Yeah, I would. My Myers-Briggs profile is ENFP.
Right.
So that's extrovert with intuition.
Yes.
Which isn't necessarily.
No.
You would probably be an ISTJ as a scientist rather than an ENFP. Yeah. So.
Do you think the criteria for a great recruitment consultant has changed that much over the years?
I do. I think the fundamental job has become more sophisticated. I think the level of self-awareness that's required to be able to self-manage is greater than it has been before.
Right.
There was very few distractions when I joined recruitment in 1994.
Yeah.
The distraction was it's the phone
or the fax
or the fax.
There's no email, nothing, not even obviously Instagram or anything like that. But
so distractions were things like cigarette breaks.
Yeah.
Whereas now there is so many options.
I think that's a very, very valid point in terms of like the productivity back then was, I think, I can't even measure it, but 20, 30 times more I would have thought in terms of the outbound stuff that people were doing because that's all they could do.
Yes, but I don't want to talk ill of other people's opinions, right? But I think there are a lot of generals out there who are trying to help people to win the last war still. Right,
I see.
Do you know?
Yeah, of course.
Like in the old days, I'll call it the old days, right? Look at my grey beard, right? This is what it did to me. Yeah. But in the old days, you dial 10 people and 7 would answer.
Yeah.
Because they also had limited distractions. They were desk bound. Today, you dial 10 people and 2 answer. Yeah. So the actual amount of input versus output.
Yeah.
The reward was quicker. The speed at getting good was quicker because you had a 70 or 80% hit rate on a pickup.
Yeah.
And to get 10 conversations in one day from a BD perspective as a recruiter today is hard.
I think you and I both know it's not just about harping on about get on the phone, but I do still feel that you're a master at the sequencing, the automation, and I'm a big proponent of that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I do believe that should be a vehicle to enable you as a recruiter to have more airtime with a client.
Absolutely.
In terms of a conversation, ideally.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And the use of technology, it doesn't replace part of the process. It enhances part of the process. Yeah. And as it enhances your ability to have more meaningful conversations with people every day, you still have to intelligently use the tool. If you bluntly use the tool and it becomes noise, it doesn't do anything other than
because the issue I've got, I think a lot of it is good, but I think there are some agencies out there that see it as a silver bullet, or they hide behind it and believe, we can get to our candidates and our clients a lot more quicker. Yes, you can, but behind that machine and that sophistication, if you're not constantly nurturing your sales ability and your salespersonship and your ability to BD, build rapport and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter how great the tech is, it might get you in the door. It won't close a sale.
No. And at some point you're going to need to talk to whoever responds. Yeah. To qualify needs, to understand urgency, to start to develop a process that they buy into, because you also have to be consistent with the messaging. You send out intelligent messaging and then you're unable to articulate how that messaging develops into good process, solid structure, hiring success.
What do you think it's going to be like though? Because there's tech out there that can kind of assess if someone's lying or not, but their commitment by their tone of voice and all that kind of stuff. And actually, I think there's so many consultants out there that see a qualified candidate as someone that is a match on a CV and a JD. A qualified candidate, as you and I would probably concur together, is not just someone who can do the job. It's someone who is qualified in terms of where else they're interviewing and all the other leads you have to get and their commitment and all. The amount of times when a deal falls over because the consultant hasn't even asked where the other candidate's interviewing. Yeah. And you find it out on interview 3, but you've got to ask that every time. So what do you think the landscape's like? I mean, I've seen agencies qualify candidates just via email.
Yeah.
So,
well, different businesses, different processes. The reality is it is still a human interaction that takes place between a consultant and a potential candidate. Yeah. And at a surface level, if the person has got the skills to do the job, then that might be 20% of the algorithm. Yeah. If what's on offer from the client meets the candidate's expectations, that's probably another 30% of the algorithm. And then another 50% of it is all of the sensitive ecology of the individual and how they're ultimately going to make a decision. Because if the job looks good for the candidate looks good for the job, but we haven't had conversations about concerns, doubts, threats,
absolutely,
the journey that they're on, the drivers, their motives, what even led to them to decide to apply or to respond to the message.
Yeah.
And if we don't understand that, we're kind of dealing with the shadow of the person.
Sure.
And we're now chasing down a placement by trying to put a CV into a job description.
Absolutely. This is a big kind of red flag for me. I was going to ask you what the do's and don'ts, but I think a lot of where process falls down is communication. And what I mean by that is how we're communicating a job or a JD to a candidate and how we're actually presenting candidates to clients. We do all this hard work to identify the candidate, and we spend an hour and a half, or maybe AI can do it for you. You write up the candidate. All you do is then you just send an email to the client and wait for the client to come back. It really frustrates me. No, pick up the phone, leave a voice note, do a video about the candidate. You know, I've had clients offer candidates directly after 4 interviews with an email kind of stuff. And it's like, it's all these things I think that, you know, there's still gaps in the process that tech can't replace, right?
Yeah. And some of the challenge is recruitment itself is a very simple process. Because it is such a simple process, an individual can believe that they've mastered it because they look at it as a simple process, because it goes 1, it goes 2, it goes 3. Actually, the journey from 1 to 2 and then from 2 to 3 is very sophisticated in terms of how you improve the quality with which you pay attention to what's being said, what's not being said, how it's being said, like the whole empath part of the process.
Yes.
Because you and I could talk on the phone and I ask you, are you interested in this job? And you go, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I write down yes.
Yeah.
Because that's my shorthand for yeah, I think so.
Absolutely.
And then I'll say to my manager, I've got this guy, Chris, he's really interested in the job. How do you know? He said so. And there's not enough interrogation or investigation that revolves around the I think so, or the tonality, or the
Well, that's very true. But isn't there tech out there that now picks that up, and it kind of like, but you still then got to investigate that. That's the problem.
Yeah, but the tech's been there for thousands of years. It's called the human ear, right?
Well, yeah.
And we're now trying to create tech to replace what really is a learnt skill, which is how to pay attention to somebody without listening to your own narrative. That is the interpretation of what's being said. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Well, we get delusions of grandeur, don't we? We pull this vacancy and it's a great client, a great role, great business. But actually, you'll get 6 other agencies. It's 12%. You're dealing with HR's mother's aunties, uncle. And it's kind of like, what constitutes a great vacancy? And I think we just fall into these traps, don't we?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And you know, I quickly said, you know, the tech is the human ear. People aren't patient today to learn skills as perhaps they were in the past.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true.
Because we're in a world of instant gratification. So it's easy to write things off and say, I'm not naturally good at that, so I'll get tech to replace it.
Yeah.
But when you get tech to replace something you're not very good at, it's very hard to know, is the tech any good? Because you can't appraise tech that is replacing something that you're not very good at to then be able to describe it as good.
Yeah.
So it's those who are willing to invest the time and the energy in the personal development. Who then, when they get good, you become exceptional at listening. You could look at that tech. And be able to make a decision. Is that tech good? That, you know, whether it's writing emails, it's creating cadences. If you're doing that because you're not very good at it, the probability is you're not very good at assessing. Is what we're now following good enough for the purpose that it's designed for? It becomes, is that better than I can do it? Or am I happy with it to let it go? Without thinking about, is the recipient happy to receive it?
It's interesting. I want to talk about your recruitment career, but whilst we're on the subject of all this kind of stuff, if you was a recruitment consultant again, you started from today or Monday, what would you do? How would you map your market out? What would you do to build a desk? That's quite a broad question, I know, but.
I'll answer how I did that in 1994. In 1994, I got a trade directory which had all of the companies that were exhibiting within a specialist marketplace who were all going to be under one roof. And I used the trade directory to help me to start to identify the organizations that would become my audience.
Yeah. Your ideal customer or whatever.
Yeah. And then having identified those organizations, then look at within that collective of 500 companies, which are the ones that look as though they would be either the most valuable as customers or the ones who appeared to be most likely to be interested in services.
Yeah.
To be able to take 500 down to what ended up being what we called in the business the Nifty 50. Mm-hmm. So if you've got your Nifty 50 out of the 500 and you invest your energy in the Nifty 50, if you discover through qualification that one isn't as nifty as you had hoped, take it out, go back to the other 450 and let's find another one. And what I would do on Monday would be very similar. I would just use technology to help me to be able to do that.
Okay.
I would make sure that what I was doing was having some fluency with the total sellable audience for what I intended to recruit.
Yeah.
And then from that, identify the smallest segment possible that would represent the highest value of being future customers.
Yes.
Without necessarily chasing rainbows. So it wouldn't be the largest businesses, it wouldn't be the smallest businesses.
Normally SMEs, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah. So I met up with somebody recently who describes it as the Goldilocks principle. Mm-hmm. Mummy bear, baby bear, daddy bear. The daddy bears are too big. The baby bears are too little. Yeah. Let's find all the mummy bears.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And they might be like the 30 to 75 million pound turnover companies.
I think that's absolutely spot on in terms of identifying the right customers. But what I found along my journey as a NED and advisor is that I'm really shocked about how a consultant even introduces themselves. They say they're specialists, but they come across as an absolute generalist. Like, I'm a financial services recruiter. Oh, really? You do banking, hedge funds, or all the other myriad of that. And I think how I've done it is like how you've done it, but also I've done a lot of BD through candidates. So instead of saying, "Oh, hi, it's Chris here from Recruitment Limited. I'm a Java consultant." If the candidate works at, say, a fintech business or quite fintech orientated, I'll be saying things, "Oh, hi, it's Chris here from Java Limited. We're a specialist Java recruitment consultancy, particularly operating in the fintech space. We're working with fintech client 1 and fintech client 2. I noticed you worked at fintech client 3, fintech client 4. My objective is to try and get you in front of some of these clients of ours over the next couple of weeks. How does that sound?" I'm trying, and then your pitch is almost the same with the client, where you're just you're name dropping competitors. And what I mean by that is, I feel that half of this is a mindset and positioning thing. If you get that right at the start, people are more likely to engage with you. What would you say to that?
I totally agree. I think what's happened in recruitment is there's been too much of a partition put between the word client and candidate. And I think there are people out there today who, if they went to a recruitment agency's website and there was 2 options, click client, click candidate, they might not know which one to pick. Because they're
you're right. I've always seen it as one customer in my head.
People who work in a sector.
Yeah.
And as you start to engage with people to help them develop professionally, that might mean the next thing we talk about is strengthening a team, solving a problem with a contractor, taking a brief for a job, or to help you professionally. What we might be talking about is guidance on salaries because you've got an appraisal coming up and you want to be able to pitch for a pay rise. Or it might be we're talking about how we could discreetly investigate a market on your behalf to find opportunities. But ultimately, there's value in our conversation if you intend to remain in the sector using the skill sets that you've developed long term in us knowing each other, because at some point we will work together.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your I'm a old school 360 recruiter, and it's taken me a number of years to get my head around 180, and now I like it. But I think there's a time and a place for it, and I think I'll ask you the question actually rather than me trying to answer my own question. What are the pros and cons of like the 180 versus 360 in your opinion?
For the consultant or the business?
Just your general view on it, I think.
Both have a place. I think there is a fitness for purpose that is often driven by the marketplace that is being traded in.
Yeah.
I think that the 360 model, it is more challenging to develop people to become competent 360 consultants because of all of the distractions. That shouldn't mean that we don't continue to do it.
But to interrupt you, back in our day, it didn't exist, did it? 180. It was everyone was a 360, wasn't it?
Yeah. But I can also see that the skill sets are they are changing. Like the job of now, in the old days, back to the old days. In the old days, the challenge was finding people. There was no LinkedIn, there was no job boards.
No.
You'd go and you'd walk on the pavement.
Maybe on a Monday you might get a CV posted through your letterbox. I think, oh, God, happy days.
You'd phone businesses to gather names of people. Like you would build your own CRM with calories, and now everyone is visible. So the skill set is no longer about let's find some people. It's about engaging with people, and engaging with people, nurturing relationships, digital outreach. It's starting to become, in some sectors, a full-time job. Which is why the two 180 roles.
I've experienced information getting lost in the ether. So you've got the 360 client-facing consultant dealing with the client, getting all the information, understanding the fabric of the business and the role and everything else, and then they pass the JD to the 180 person. It's just got a set of words on a bit of paper, and they're selling that set of words to the candidate. And it's I think where it works is when they're working in conjunction with it, and the consultant or the delivery person knows the business. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel there's too many cooks spoiling the broth. But also I do recognise that there are different skill sets. But
your processes need to be much stronger. The integration between the 180 and the 180, the salesperson, the account manager, however you call them, and the delivery team. There needs to be a much stronger handover process. As a customer. Like you could, like when you buy your car, you meet a salesperson, you kind of build a relationship sometimes with the salesperson with test drives. Then you get handed over to the aftercare, after sales team. Then you get handed over to the service team. And if that handover process isn't good, you feel like you're losing something from the experience because you're having to either repeat yourself, you don't feel as though you're fully understood. So there needs to be good process whenever you have multiple people that are part of a customer's journey.
So I always say whether you've got one job on or 1,000 jobs on, there's time in your working week to BD no matter what. And BD, I think people get this fear of even the phrase business development. What else do you want to call it? You're developing business. It's like, I always see it as every call is an opportunity to BD. But I think I attended one of your sessions actually where you talked about. I love this actually. I think you was in a meeting and it was it JCB or something, I think you said, and one of their suppliers, and you put a candidate into one of your clients' suppliers, as in maximising the opportunity. As an example, I train my consultants to, if you're sending a candidate to a role and he's spot on for that role, why don't you at the same time send him to 5 competitors anyway to open up? So all those kind of techniques. Can you give us some gold there around how people can maximise what they're doing, as opposed to, I think we get too tunnel visioned on, we've got to place that candidate in that role, but there's so many other opportunities we can create, other roles.
What makes people feel that I need to place this candidate in this role does come from a good place. Like they believe that this candidate is good for that job is good for this candidate. And it then allows them to sell themselves the narrative of, so that's done. She really likes them. They really like her. I can't picture any reason why it's going to go south. So why do more work? So what they miss is that if she is as good as you believe, and I'm sure she is, 5 other businesses don't know you can find people of that quality. So unless you show 5 other businesses somebody of that quality, when you have them in a process, when your process is finished, you'll be going looking for business and you'll have less of a calling card. So the idea of let's take to market a message that revolves around what is in demand,
Yeah.
as opposed to what is in supply. Like if you encounter a candidate who is in less demand and you take them to market because you haven't got something for them, you'll probably prove that there isn't any demand for that person.
Yeah, yeah.
You have a candidate that is in demand because a client has jumped on the CV.
And that's right. It's like we're going, it's not just about speccing candidates, but the amount of times people send a candidate over and they don't ask for the interview, or they don't create urgency. Things like, this individual is going to be snapped up in the next 2 weeks, what I suggested, no obligation, free working interview. And it's kind of like, I think sometimes we fall into the trap of, we're not administration people passing information from one individual to another. I feel it's still a sales role, and sometimes we lose sight of that.
Yeah. And you're in control of that whole decision as to what am I going to do next.
Yeah.
And to maximize on your productivity, what you do next should be linked to what you just did, rather than always starting something new. So if I arrange the interview for the candidate and go, great, that's sorted, that's going to happen on Monday.
Yeah.
What am I going to do now? I'm going to do some BD. Right, who shall I call? Here's 10 companies I don't know anything about. That's good BD. So I'll then phone these 10 strangers, begin a process of integrating myself into these 10 strangers, manage the process on Monday that's taking place, and not actually see that there's a candidate going for an interview on Monday.
This is so important.
That actually might also appreciate having an interview on Tuesday and Wednesday, because then they're choosing between my job, and my job.
Yeah.
And if I take to market somebody who I actually feel very positively about because they are now in a process, and I can show 5 other hiring managers. Exactly right. I think you're going to like Belinda because. And I talk about the reasons why Belinda has triggered an interview. Yeah. I've arranged an interview for her because what they've seen in her is this outcome, this outcome, and this outcome. Yeah, and that's it. And that's also, I think that's called next agreed actions, knowing all parties know what they're going to do next. But also, I think that if you can't get retained or exclusive, what I always try to do is get some form of control. So you're on the phone for an hour. Mr. Clark, we spent an hour on the phone. We've got a really good understanding of exactly the sort of person you want, the skill set. What we're going to do now as part of our service level agreement is send you an email with the job description that we've just discussed. If there's anything that we've missed or you want to tailor, let me know. The email is going to have a schedule of when you're going to first interview, when we're going to get interview feedback, when you're going to second interview, when you're going to offer, when you're going to pay. And this way we can make sure that we can manage the process for you. Then shut up, see what they say. And I think too often we qualify the job, we don't qualify the bloody process. Yeah, totally. And that whole process piece, like I get how you're describing the word control. I prefer the word command. Okay. Yeah, I would like the client to feel in control because I'm in command. Yes. And being in command, you lay out a schedule. They now feel control. They can see what's going to happen. I now feel some surety. You know what you're doing here. It's not, let me see if I can find some CVs and see what you think, and then we can arrange some interviews. It's not, let's get the interview slots booked and then kind of see what goes from there. Like when I'm in command, typically we find that this process takes 6 weeks. This is the timeline that we'll work to. This is how we'll make sure that we avoid the pit holes. Is there anything here that gives you any concerns? Are you happy to work on this basis? Client's in control. I'm in command. Absolutely. Everyone's happy. And the benefits of that is that when you start presenting that schedule to the candidate and say we've got interview schedule, that they put that role to the top, more likely to put that role to the top of their list. Everything kind of it helps, doesn't it? So in terms of candidate acquisition, what have you learned along the way? Because there's so many different ways to find candidates, I think, nowadays. Have you got any sort of insight into, other than doing a Boolean search, for example? Yeah. Biggest lesson early in my career: no one likes to be called a candidate. Right. And no one likes to be treated like a candidate. Right. It starts to create a sense of commoditization. Interesting. The word candidate really is a verb. It's not a noun. So I express candidacy. I have entered a state of mind where I'm now a candidate for something. Whether it's your thing or not.
I tell you get what you're saying.
What I mean?
Yeah, you're kind of like one of many. Kind of you're living in hope. You're not anything tangible. I get it. Yeah.
Like I do a search on LinkedIn, and here's 25 profiles. If I accidentally say, "Oh, I found 25 candidates," I'm going to treat them like they have expressed candidacy, and maybe suggest I have a job that they would be interested in.
Yeah.
But that has this assumption that they are ready to be treated like a candidate.
Right. Okay.
If I treat them like an individual. And I help them to understand the benefits of entering a state of candidacy because of what I have.
Yeah.
It speeds up the process because I engage with more people, as opposed to reaching out to profiles and treating them like candidates because they Google whacked on my Boolean search string.
Yeah. One of the things I like to do is that we do an initial search and say 200 come up. What most people tend to do, they'll get us a 200 long list, for example, and they'll spend days, hours and days whittling through, looking for the first 4 lines on LinkedIn, going yes, no, and then that takes it down to 60. Then they might phone them. My view is that I think that you should send an email on InMail to those 200 because the search you've created is good enough to say that they're probably at least 70% there or thereabouts. Send the JD to them, but within that email, say the client's been very explicit about these 4 things that they must have. If you've got this, and this, please provide a summary of what you've done with that. If you haven't, unfortunately, the client's not going to take you forward. Therefore, you're getting the candidate to qualify themselves in and out, and I think you're hitting more people more quickly. Then I would do the phoning. So what I'm trying to say is, I think sometimes we're too precise with these things for fear of pissing people off. But you can be quite cute about it and get the candidate to do the work. So what should we call them? Person to do the work for you. Sometimes, no?
Yeah. But I'm sure when you do that search and you've got 200, there's probably a good way to split it into 2 lots of 100.
Right.
And if I could split it into 2 lots of 100, I could A/B test something. And if I can turn it into 2 lots of 100, I could probably turn it into 4 lots of 50.
Yeah.
And as I do that as 4 lots of 50, like it might be that I decide, right, these 50, just to make the maths easy for me, these 50, I feel that they would define this role, if it was suitable for them, as stepping up.
I see, right.
These 50, I think if they were to look at this role, they would describe it as being an opportunity to become a big fish in a little pond. These 50, I think, might see it as being an opportunity to strike more work-life balance.
Okay.
So as I start to think about how would they describe this opportunity to themselves, and I could then introduce to them. Yeah. I feel that this could prove to be a career climber for you because you're in a group of, I'm not typing you're in a group of 50, but they're in a group of 50 people who've got 3 to 5 years experience in the same company with the same job title.
I agree. This is really important because I think the amount of times where we've got a legend for this role, he's nailed on, and the client goes for someone. I think sometimes a client doesn't necessarily go for the best fit on paper. Sometimes you don't know in an interview. They might have gelled with the guy better because they've got the same football team. It's a weird. And sometimes you probably do need to kind of, put in that wild card or whatever it might be, or explain to the candidate, the client. This is why I think when we're presenting CVs, the reason you pick up the phone and say, the reason why I've sent you this CV is because yes, he's got 75 out of 100 on the skill set and the experience, but I think culturally he's got this, and I think that's when that can be the difference sometimes,
and that creates the stickiness of hire, and stickiness of hire is what creates value for money for the fee, as opposed to the price that they paid for the transaction. You ask a client who's hiring somebody to join their team permanently, what do they need to be in the first 90 days? What do they need to become in 2 years? They'll have this picture of actually what does the trajectory look like for this person? What is realistic? What is possible? And they'll interview people for the person that they could become as much as, are you going to be able to do the job today? And if you get overly fixated on this person's perfect for the job, well, they might not stick around because it's already everything that they're doing. And if they're taking it for the pay rise, the joy of the pay rise disappears after 2 pay slips because very quickly pay rise becomes disposable income. and then become standard of living. You know, you forget about the pay rise quite rapidly.
And I think we forget we're consultants. We are recruitment consultants. So I think our role is to actually consult with the client and say, actually, Mr. Client, so I've got an idea how I would position this role with a prospective candidate. How would you position it yourself? There's that kind of those kind of questions, aren't there?
Yes. And not every client has given that conscious consideration, which is how they then react to what may be the curveball or the wild card candidate, because something in their unconscious means I see something in this person, although they might not have all of the skills. I see a lot of potential. Because there's a lot of potential, I think this is somebody that we could develop over 5 years, not just hire for the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. You mentioned at the start when I asked you about you improve performance and you make it fun, which I love. I want to talk about how you make it fun, but I think performance management is a massive thing. I'm a big proponent of follow-up because you are one of the best trainers out there. But you know as well as I do, I can do the best training session in the fucking world. But if that's not followed up and measured and you don't know what outcomes you got from that, you might as well not bother, kind of thing.
Yes.
So what you found, I found the biggest thing is basically not necessarily the training or lack of, it's the follow-up, no?
Yeah, very much. The training has to happen for the follow-up to occur.
Yeah.
But the follow-up is where the learning takes place, not in the training room. Like if you go into a training room for 3 hours, you write copious notes, you have been exposed to ideas or tactics or processes.
Yeah.
You haven't really learned anything because you'll learn it through doing. And the moment that you sit down to have your first go at whatever it is, interrogating ChatGPT, picking up the telephone to talk to a candidate, you learn and then you create beliefs about yourself, about the skill, about the event that then starts to dictate how you do the next one. So the first time that you do it, you might be close to the definition that was given to you in training. You then iterate it and go, oh, that didn't really work for me. So I'm just going to just going to move this. I'm going to change this. And then within 7 or 8 goes, you're finding your voice or you're finding your capability, but you're also deviating from what was shared without realizing how far you've deviated. So the follow-up is how is your learning journey going? Which is the application of what's been shared in the context of your understanding. You know,
I think it's that balance of kind of you teach a framework or a program, but you do, as you think you're saying, you give them a little bit of creative license to make it their own version of, but we're still on this track of this is what we need to do, right?
Yeah. So the follow-up is really important to help somebody to recognize the development that they're achieving, the journey that they're on, to recognize some of the challenges that they're facing may actually be natural challenges that shouldn't be interpreted as failures. It's just part of the journey of learning, right? And if you've had 3 hours of time in a training room, you're probably going to require at least double that in terms of follow-up and conversational coaching discussions with a manager, a peer, a coach.
And you'll need a X amount of time to put this into practice. And, you know, it's not going to go out there and press that button. It's going to work. It's going to take a few attempts anyway, in general, isn't it? So
yes.
In terms of the training that you've seen, what apart from follow-up is, I mean, what's the good, bad, and ugly that you've seen in your time as a trainer?
Man, that's really difficult to answer in a public domain. Things that have been good. What makes good training is not defined by anyone other than the attendee. It's the attendee's perception that revolves around value, relevance, and I was going to say quality, but it's does it actually feel as though it has my best interests at heart to help me to be able to improve? like the agenda of it. Let's call it the agenda, right? What is the actual agenda of what is taking place here?
Yeah.
Is this something that is being done to me with an outcome that I am a passenger to?
Yeah.
Is this something that is intended to help me because of things that are inherent in my own challenges in attempting to achieve the goal that I have?
Yeah.
Or is it attempting to help me to do something to achieve somebody else's goal? Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think what you're trying to say there is that you need to empathize with them and get them to understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that they walk into the room, like we'll consider that there's a training room, right? If someone walks into a training room and has limited understanding of what are we going to do, why are we going to do, how are we going to do, and with what intention. You know, if somebody's told you've got sales training next week, Tuesday, boardroom, 1 o'clock.
It's so true.
Yeah, okay. Is it for me? Yeah, it's for you. Okay, what are we going to do? You know, but that doesn't tend to be like a pushback narrative. But it's a spoken.
So how do you do that when you walk into do you walk into a group of people and you don't just spat out the training? Do you warm them up a little bit, or do you have to have individual meetings first? How do you personally do that kind of?
In a utopian world, time would be spent with each individual to talk about their perceptions in terms of goals, objectives, and purpose.
Absolutely.
I don't always have time to do that, or I don't have the physical presence to be there to do that with people. What I encourage and expect of the businesses I work with is that there is a conversation between a manager and a person who is going on training that is a kind of cup of coffee. Let's think about the training next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's think about what you could discover. Let's think about what matters to you. And to encourage the person to start to think about the relevance, the agenda,
the intention.
And the intention.
Yeah.
Because you are being, when you're sent on training, it is with best intentions.
Yeah, of course.
It doesn't always feel like that. There's a guy, Stuart, if you're watching, Stuart said to me, Jeremy, you used to come into the business I worked at, and I felt that training was something the MD did to us using you. Now I own my own business. I understand far more the value of training. Because I now have a different perception as to what it is for. And all of that was about intention.
This is what I do with the training that I do. It's I get them to visualize. One of mine is my 90-day plan. Is imagine in 90 days time where you are doing a deal a week. You got clients, you got candidates. How does that feel? I think it's the same kind of thing where you're saying that eventually it's like my intention is to make something good of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know.
Like it or not, you are now sacrificing this many hours to be in this room, and it shouldn't be because of the custard creams, or to be able to get away from sitting next to Barry. You know, you are here, I hope, with a stronger intent, but not necessarily is that going to be the experience of everybody that is linked to training. And
also, I think comprehension as well. What I tend to do or try to do at the end of a session is, can you just tell me what you've learned from this? Because I think it's really important to get the feedback in the session as well, isn't it? What do you think? Yeah,
I do, and multiple times through the session. Like each piece of, we'll call it content. Each piece of content that gets unpacked, needs to have a moment of reflection to allow people to process, what am I actually taking from this that is for me? Training is a buffet, and as you walk along and you decide, I'm going to have that, I don't want that, I'll have 2 of those. When you're in training, you are doing that. You are accepting some messages, rejecting others, and sometimes you accept messages because of the comfort of the message, and you're rejecting things that probably you should be more accepting of. So as you are making your selection on the buffet, if you haven't thought with enough clarity, what is my intention going into this? What do I really need to discover? if you thought about that, you might actually go, do you know what? I don't think I like pate, but I think I'm going to go for the pate.
Yeah.
And be more intentional with what you consume.
Yeah.
And how you hold on to it to put it into practice.
I love that. So in your mind, what constitutes a good week? You know, what sort of inputs, KPIs, metrics do you think? Because there's so many people saying all sorts of stuff out there. What would be a good week, and what would you measure?
So I split things into three things: standards, goals, KPIs.
Right.
So standards are behaviors. They rely on nothing other than you to do it. So the standard might revolve around, whenever we take in a job, we complete this checklist. It's a standard.
I like that. Yeah.
And because it is a standard, it's for you to maintain that standard. The standard might be every day. The standard is we have 10 business conversations.
Yes.
We might not call them sales calls, but we have conversations that revolve around business that helps us to be able to move forward.
Yeah. The
standard is 10. And that is controlled by your own focus and energy. So it totally sits in your wheelhouse to decide, do I want to or not want to achieve the standard? The goals are your expectations from delivering the standards.
Right, okay.
So what do you expect to be able to achieve today from your 10 business conversations? What do you expect to achieve this week when you go through the checklist on a job? Do you know? And as you start to set goals, goals are aspirational.
Okay.
So there will be weeks where you have an intent to achieve something, but you don't achieve it, but you're aspiring to achieve a number of goals. The KPIs are the performance metrics that tend to be relationships between two numbers that are either conversions or percentages.
This is the trick, isn't it? You could make 100 calls to a butcher, baker, and a candle maker and get nothing. You make one call to CEO and get everything.
Correct.
Kind of thing.
So as you look at the relationship between standards, goals, what starts to reveal itself is a set of KPIs that is often dedicated to the individual based upon where they're at. So when a business says you didn't hit your KPIs this week and they're talking about standards, I get the intent, but for me it's the wrong language.
Okay.
You turn up to draw a basic salary to deliver a set of standards.
Yeah, of course. Right.
Like the standard is something that you buy into because the standard is the definition of what is our minimum expectation of self.
Yes.
Forget the business's expectation of me.
That's so true, yeah.
It's minimum expectation of self. So when I think about what a good working week looks like, have I delivered my standards? Have I done the work that is required to increase the probability of achieving my goals?
Yeah.
And do I feel as though I am seeing an improvement in my ability to achieve my KPIs because I'm getting better at the conversion of one thing into another?
I like the psychology of that, because when you start with standards, you're almost kind of like, it's making you look at your own behavior, isn't it?
Yes.
Which then drives the outcome anyway, usually, you know.
Like a standard could be measured in time. It could be, I worked with a business where one of the standards in the business was 60 minutes of reading a week. Everyone had to spend 60 minutes reading something.
I like that. Yeah.
And it didn't matter what you read.
Yeah.
What you needed to do was to then summarize back to the team.
Yeah.
I read 3 chapters of Dan Pink's book.
Yeah.
This is what I've taken away from it.
Yeah.
I read this essay that was written by, you know, and having people consume something to then process it, to then share it with the team.
Yeah.
It was helping them to have better quality conversations with their clients. And in fact, in that business, part of the work that I was doing with them, the title of the course was How to Have Business Conversations with People where the agenda isn't talking about recruitment. You're just to talk about their business, to talk about their goals, to talk about the impact that things that are going on in the world is having on projects, workflow, stability.
See, that's the thing. I think before we start with any of the sales training or the metrics or the operations, I think it's positioning your recruitment consultant as not positioning the client as some sort of superior being. They're a human being. Have a conversation with them. All these long-winded, massive introductions. I'm Chris O'Connell from Recruitment Limited, Recruitment Reveal. I'm about to talk to you about recruitment, but I've said it so many times, so you know it's coming kind of introduction versus just talk to the guy, or the girl.
Totally.
What do you think?
And actually what they want to talk about at some point could lead to a conversation that is about people and talent and hiring and retention. It doesn't have to start at recruitment because we work in recruitment. And it's that ability to be able to slow down, to have a more meaningful conversation about everything else that then creates a greater opportunity for you to earn the right to talk about what you do. I
also think that back in our day, there were a lot more bigger businesses in recruitment, and it was all about driving headcount and rack 'em high, pack 'em high. Now it's obviously that the tech is replacing some of that, and I think the market's exposing some of the businesses, but it's probably going to be about getting more out of less, I think, isn't it? What's your view on how the market is now and looking now in terms of, because there are some I was at an event yesterday, I think there was 84 deals that, recruitment deals that went through. There are still people buying businesses, but it's just not the same anymore, is it? There's just smaller businesses out there. So how do you think that affects the sector?
I think it affects almost every business in sector and outside of sector, right? I think that as we see things like the cost of employing people is increasing, every business in the country will be having conversations that revolve around productivity. Anyone who works in recruitment should be talking to their clients about how do you measure productivity in your team. Like a finance team will measure productivity, a sales team measures productivity, a warehouse will measure productivity, and productivity has never been more important. And now that productivity is revealing itself to be the most important metric in recruitment, it's not the vanity metrics of headcount, it's how do we produce more with less people? And the only way to produce more with less people is to start to really look at what is the performance of a good business. What are the structures and the systems and the processes that give people the freedom to be able to do more of the higher dollar activities?
Oh, absolutely. I think I saw a post of yours about pipeline. I love pipeline in terms of I can always assess somebody's capability or what they're going to do, not by how many deals they've done, but I call it like a traffic system. You've got your green clients where you've got your live roles, you've got your amber clients where you're nurturing them, they've got something coming up, and you've got your red target clients. And the more the more yellows the more ambers and reds you've got, the better. Because at least what worries me is the people I've got 6 jobs on. I was like, okay, and you've got nothing coming behind that. So what's your view on all that kind of stuff? The importance of feeding the machine, if you want.
And there's a lot of people who are deal watchers. And they overinvest time watching what's going on in the things that are probably playing out and done. And not thinking about where will the next piece come from. It creates feast and famine, good month, bad month, good month, bad month. That the time to be at your most attentive to your pipeline is when the placement pipeline is rich.
Yes, of course.
Bring more in. And you call them the reds. The more red that you have in your project plan, the happier you should be. June looks good. What we're doing today is likely to be influencing outcomes that we'll be celebrating in 7 weeks.
But it's to interrupt you, it's things like there's gold in them hills already. What I mean by that, if you've just placed someone, they've just offered and accepted, get the manager name and backfill that. There's things like that you can do without even thinking about it, isn't there?
There's a whole race to get jobs filled quickly. And if the journey to fill a job goes from A to Z, A, instruction, Z, job filled. There are a lot of people who don't focus on the journey from B to Y. And because they don't follow the journey from B to Y,
Got you,
they miss all of the intel the gossip, the stories. You're the candidate who phones you and says, I'm sorry, I got your email yesterday. I've been really busy at work. I didn't have time to call you back. Oh, okay, no problem. Are you good for next week? And they don't investigate any of you. Well, what's going on at work?
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't discover that their managers just walked off site. You know, all of the things that just comes from being present.
Yeah. Because
I'm paying attention to the journey from B to Y.
So on that point about being present and the whole well-being piece, you live on a farm, don't you? Which is a dichotomy, being in an office, but in this demanding, challenging economy and the cost of living and the stress and the distractions that we have, what advice would you give to a recruitment consultant who needs to get a bit of life harmony, and you can get burnt out in this because it's quite demanding? How do you be present? Because I think zooming out sometimes can be the best thing you can do, as opposed to making that next phone call, right?
Yeah. My best advice would be get a pig.
That's got to be on the trailer, that one. Good answer.
Like if you want to have good harmony with the world, spend time in nature.
Yeah.
Get a pig.
Yeah.
Downtime is really important. Like recruitment feels very grind.
Yeah.
And moments of downtime. It doesn't have to be duvet days and time off.
Yeah.
Just taking some time out to, like if you're in an office, you get out of your chair, you go to the window and you allow your eyes to focus on infinity. Like look at the clouds, just something that helps you to, like screen staring is bad for us, right?
No, of course. Yeah.
We're hunched over, we're looking at a screen. If we're feeling under pressure, we've got tension in our jaw.
Because I've done some stuff with you online, and you desk stand. You stand sometimes, don't you? Things like that you can do, isn't there?
Yeah, I desk stand for meetings. I desk stand for online training sessions. I desk stand to record things. We are creatures who have evolved to solve problems whilst moving.
Yeah, of course.
If we're not designed to sit in chairs and angst over problems that are outside of our control.
No.
So, get up, move, get some air.
And the fun element you mentioned, how do you inject that in your businesses?
Ultimately, recruitment is a game. What annoys people in recruitment is they've decided what the rules are of the game, but they haven't shared them with the customers.
Right.
And the customers are playing a different game with different rules.
Of course, yeah.
So if you're doing recruitment and you're playing to Queensberry rules, and actually the client has decided to go full on mixed martial art in the octagon, you might not discover that until they told you it was exclusive, but they're interviewing 3 other candidates. So you can get frustrated with your perceptions of people breaking the unwritten rules.
Yeah.
So because recruitment is a game, and it doesn't have any rules, it doesn't have a start time and a finish time, it doesn't have any of these boundaries.
Yeah, of course.
We start to have fun when we create the rules, and as we start to create the rules that we wish to work by, we share the rules with our customers.
Right.
And as we talk to our customers about these are the rules, it creates psychological contracts that helps us to be able to ensure that we both have clarity on what are we actually playing here? What is the goal? How long is the game going to last? What are the rules? Like you and I could leave this room, go to the pub, play pool, and I'll pick up the white, and you'll go, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm moving the white.
Yeah.
You've got 2 shots. You can't pick up the white.
Yeah.
And we start to discover we've got different rules for things.
Right, of course.
And we have to then make a new agreement as to what rules we're playing by. And then we discover another one that you think is 2 shots on the black. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So like these ideas that we have that candidates shouldn't do this. Why do clients do that?
So it's how we respond to these, because it happens. We're dealing with people. We're not selling a book, a car, pen, a watch. It's a person, and as you know as well as I do, I can't work myself out, let alone anyone else. You got to go. You got to just roll with the punches. So I think a big element of good recruiter is that ability to literally be agile and adapt. And this curveball comes in from a client or a candidate. It's that ability not to react, isn't it? It's to respond, isn't it?
Totally. And how you choose to respond that's what matters, right? It's not what happens to you.
Absolutely.
You know, the person lets you down, how you respond to that.
Yeah.
They're just playing a different game with different rules.
But also, I've done so many times when the candidate said no. I don't see no's as no's. I see no's as yeses. It's like you don't always have to take the first thing that happens as read. You can still try to negotiate and convince. And I think sometimes we give things up too easily as well. A candidate said no. Oh, okay then. Well, have you not asked why or challenged it or tried to turn him around? Or it could be why has he said no? It could be something so small. And I think sometimes we and the client as well. We're scared to do that. No.
Yes. Because we're not willing to find out what are the rules that they are playing and what's the game that they're playing.
Yeah.
We're too fixated on our rules and our game.
Yeah.
So because we're like, well, they said no, and in my rule book that means this.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in their world they're playing a different game, and if you started to ask them more questions about what is your actual goal, what are you looking to achieve?
Yeah.
Maybe if I understood your goal and what you were looking to achieve, that's the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, now I could show you this in a different light under the rules of your game.
That's instead of jumping down to that, that goes back to that empathy piece and that understanding. I think that's the difference between good and great sometimes in this industry. So how comes you ended up as a what you are now? What would you describe yourself as actually? What are you? How would I describe
I would describe myself as a business performance coach.
Okay.
/ L&D consultant.
Yeah.
To anyone else outside of a podcast, I would just describe myself as a guy who works in recruitment. You know, I'm a coach to business owners that revolves around results and performance.
Yeah.
Some of that results and performance work happens working with them to help to be able to develop systems or structures or processes or people. Some of it works by me then engaging with members of teams and consultants and so on. But ultimately, I coach more than I train. And I coach performance, and performance is defined by the goals that people have and the objectives that they've got to start to define what will good look like.
I think it's not just all your tricks, your methodologies, and your program. What I do as well is when you say coach, it's so important. It's coaching the leaders how to communicate these things with their team as well. I think a lot of it is how it's delivered as well.
Yeah.
You know,
like if we looked at probably 65% of the conversations that I have with people initially, it revolves around behaviors of others.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, of course.
If only candidates would do this. I wish my clients were more like that. Or our team need to get better at, right? So people's frustrations revolve around the behaviors of others.
Yeah.
Without really thinking about what drives the behaviors of others. We're back to the rules of games.
Yeah, of course.
And people do things with a positive intent, always.
Yeah.
We might question it as whether it was positive because we're comparing it to our rules and our game. But as I encounter people who have these questions about other people's behavior, ultimately what drives it is their beliefs, their values,
absolutely.
Their thought processes.
Absolutely.
Everything stems from that.
Yeah.
So if you're a business owner, people aren't picking up the phone enough, Jeremy.
Yeah.
What are their beliefs that revolve around the phone?
Exactly.
Well, how am I meant to know? You know, it's that. Well, that's really where you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you're not doing work there as a coach, by actually helping people to question their beliefs that revolve around an activity, and you're just trying to drive the activity, you're probably coaching people to become resentful.
Well, absolutely, they'll do it out of resentment rather than because they have to, not
compliance.
Because absolutely. So it's not the act of picking up the phone. It's the reasons why they won't do that, and it's just absolutely. And I think you summarised that really well. We're kind of coming towards the end. It's been fascinating. So quick rundown of your career. Then you kind of stopped at university, then you got into recruitment. You worked at some quite big firms, and what were you, a consultant, or what were you, contract perm, or what?
Oh, so First job in recruitment was healthcare, temp,
Right.
high volume, care assistants, domiciliary care, RGNs, residential social workers.
In that market, aren't they? They just don't, half of them don't turn up. Shouldn't say that, but
For some.
yeah.
I didn't know any different, right? So that's the market that I went into.
Yeah.
I started, so it was a catering recruitment agency that wanted to begin in care.
Yeah.
So they hired me to just investigate how to place care people. So I did that for a couple of years and loved it. Just fun, just chaos.
Yeah.
And then I moved north and I got a job with a business called Humana International.
Oh, I know them. Yeah.
And I joined Humana as an exec search consultant in the machine tool industry, which was very exciting, all across Europe. So exec, temp recruitment to exec search.
Yeah.
As a franchise business, it was a really good learning experience.
Complete dichotomy to the previous one.
Yeah.
It's still recruitment, but it's different.
Yeah. And in that business, so when I was in that business, I was 24, 25, and probably the youngest person in that office by about 30 years.
Wow. No way.
Because the majority of them were in exec search, having spent 25 years as a supply chain director or 30 years as a CTO, and they were then working their little black book of contacts, whereas I was just working a phone with no contacts, which was great, but it didn't have what felt like true longevity because of the franchise model that it was. So I went to a business called Hayes. Some people will have heard of Hayes.
Yeah.
It was a very different animal to the one that it is today.
Yeah.
It was very new business orientated. It was quite Wild West.
Oh, it was still sort of on the rise then back then, was it?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I joined the accountancy and finance division before it was called accountancy and finance, when it was called accountancy personnel.
Okay.
Because it had just been acquired by Hayes, the business accountancy personnel.
Yeah.
So I worked at Hayes and spent a good 8 years at Hayes before moving to a more agile, scaling, regional finance recruitment business called SF Group.
I know the SF Group as well, actually. Yeah, they used to partner with my previous business of mine. They had a good name in that particular niche, didn't they? They did quite well. Yeah.
And I joined them in a rapid growth phase for them. While I was there, headcount went from 40 to maybe 130.
See, to interject there, this is really interesting. I always feel a great recruiter, and that goes against the grain of being niche, but I think a great recruiter can operate well in any market because fundamentally it's still the same thing.
Yeah, totally. And people can get quite precious about their market or their processes. I know that there is a snobbery around exec search and retained.
Yeah.
I went from I had 160 temps working for me.
Yeah, exactly.
On low hourly rates.
A few quid an hour margin or whatever.
And pittance on margin.
Yeah, if you're
loved
lucky.
it.
Yeah.
Then went to executive search and was doing 30 to 35% placement fees.
Yeah.
Only retained salaries, 150 grand plus.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Didn't feel one was more superior than the other.
Yeah, but I think what stood you in good stead, obviously you have the IQ because you went to the, but if I had the choice, I know everyone says this to a degree, but the choice between IQ and EQ, I think EQ goes back to that intuition thing you said right at the start. I think the reason why you've done well is that you don't, it's not like I say as bold as you understand people, but you understand people better than a lot of people not in recruitment. I think that's so important. Or sometimes it's the ability to kind of take a risk and ask the extra question, or just because someone says no, it's you believe you can get them to say yes. It's I think a bit of an art. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do.
It's very hard to describe that magic dust.
Yeah. You know, the most common thing people would say to me when I worked in exec search, and then when I worked at Hayes, because a lot of my interactions would begin on the phone.
Yeah.
Build relationships, maybe challenge things, maybe be sometimes edgier than the average person. And then when I would get to meet people, they would say one of two things to me. I thought you would be taller, or I thought you would be older.
Yeah, right.
So pre-beard,
yeah,
I looked like a kid.
Right.
And being shorter than average,
yeah, right,
I look like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
But people would draw these pictures of who I was.
I get that loads. When I was doing it, my clients said I sounded like 40, but I looked about 14 because I didn't have a beard. I get it, but that's the art of the phone. Mm-hmm. It's you can create a perception of pretty much any persona, can't you? It's the tone, it's the tonality again, isn't it?
Yeah. And tonality is like of all the tech that exists in the world right now for recruitment, the most important bit of tech to learn to use is your voice, your tonality,
absolutely,
and your capability to be able to project with congruence your beliefs to help somebody else.
Because your tone is very subtle. It's quite soft, but I think you deliver things. I've seen you present as well. It just proves that you can say, when you're giving feedback to a person as well, you could say one thing and someone else could say exactly the same thing, but they'll think you're a hero and he's an absolute arsehole because you've said it in such a way. You could be saying something like you're fired. You could say it in such a way it's like, oh, okay, I'm fired then. It's such a psychology, such a lot to that in terms of the psychology of that, isn't there?
Yeah, very much.
And that's an art, I think, that you pick up along the way.
Yeah, it is. It's like everything in life. It's a skill that you refine. It's not I don't think there's anything in this world that is an innate talent. Mm-hmm. People see things as talent, without seeing the work that has happened to start to allow it to look like a talent. And that's sometimes the difficult thing for people in recruitment is they join the industry. They don't feel immediately talented at it, and see others who they might describe as being talented, but they didn't see the work that they did. In the 3 years before they got there. And now that they haven't seen the work that they did, they see the work that they do. Well, she doesn't have to make 100 calls a day, or he's not on the phone all the time and he's doing like 500,000. Without seeing all of the journey.
Absolutely.
That helped them to get to where they are.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Before you go, any sort of last gold nuggets you want to leave? You know, say the audience is mainly a good recruitment consultant. What can you leave them with to give them some hope for 2025?
Everything is possible. Everything is possible. And when we talk about recruitment, impossible is an opinion. You can decide how you react to things. You can decide how you feel about things.
Absolutely,
and how you react and how you feel has a massive impact on what you do. You can spend all the time moaning about the lack of jobs or the uncertainty in the world, or you can start to see the opportunity that is hidden inside the thing that you're moaning about. Because there will be a smaller percentage of people who slow down enough to look for the opportunity. Because they're too happy to join the moaning club outside the building, vaping together, moaning about what's going on. Whilst one or two decide to stick it out and find the genuine opportunity in it.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's a life advice as well, isn't it? You know, you are what you think, and you can create anything with the right mindset and attitude. Mate, absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.